Hi my lovely YouTube friends. This is my baby, not a real baby, but looks it though, doesn't it? It's my beautiful reborn. I know people think they're freaky, but I think they're adorable. So this is a tutorial so I can show you how to make this teddy bear slumber sack. And it's quite simple to work up, quite difficult though to use the chenille yarn. So if you have not used it before, I wouldn't recommend for a beginner. Give it a go, see what you think, but it might be a bit difficult to work with if you haven't worked with it before. Quick tips before we begin. This is made for size newborn, brand new baby to about 3 months. So if your baby is bigger than that, in the beginning where we do the foundation chain, you just add a few chains, and when we do our 20 row repeat after our foundation chain, then just add an extra couple of rows for a bigger baby. So you can adapt it to suit any size baby or even an adult even. Now that's an idea. I might be doing a gypsy slumber sack soon. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and here we go. As always, I have created a written version of this pattern. If you prefer a written pattern, it is available on Ravelry for a small fee, and the link to that pattern will be listed in the description box. Okay, so for this tutorial, you will need a pair of scissors. I'm going to be using a 5.5mm crochet hook. You will need a darning needle with a large eye for threading chenille yarn. It'll be quite difficult to thread, so you will need one that's got that large eye there. You will need a smaller needle, and that is for sewing on buttons at the end. 2 buttons and some thread for sewing on those buttons. The yarn you will need for this project, this is an Australian yarn. This is called Lincraft Fairy Floss yarn if you are in Australia, but if you're not, any chenille yarn will do. And I'm going to use 2 balls of that. This is a 50-gram ball. We're probably going to need more than one of these, so I would suggest 100 grams of those. And this one's just a scrap ball. This is just a standard worsted weight white yarn. So I'm going to just use a tiny bit of that for the bottom. So you just use whichever scrap yarn that you have. I suggest something strong and sturdy. This is for our beginning chain and where we're going to work our drawstring. So you can use any colour worsted weight yarn, whichever matches your chenille yarn, something that blends nicely. Whatever you have available to you in your scraps is fine. So to begin, I'm going to make a slip knot. And I'm going to chain 40. Okay, so at this point we're just going to take care as to not twist that chain. Sometimes I just want to twist. So we're going to find the beginning chain and we're going to slip stitch into that one, like so. Right. And then we're just going to chain 1. We're going to single crochet into that first stitch that we joined into, and then we're just going to put 1 single crochet in each stitch around, and as I do that I'm just going to hide this tail as well as I go. So single crochet all the way along. Okay, so when we reach the end, we're going to slip stitch into that first single crochet that we made. So then we're just going to leave a bit of a tail so that we can sew that one in and cut off that worsted weight yarn. We're just going to pop that one aside now because we're not going to need that one again until the very end. Okay, so now we're going to join in our chenille yarn, and you can do that any way that you like to join your yarn in. How I like to do it is I'm just going to undo that slip stitch. I'm just going to start it again, and then instead of pulling that white through, I'm going to join the chenille yarn and pull that through. That is my preferred color changing method. Okay, now these tails, you can leave them to the end or you can sew them in as you go. So to begin, we're going to chain 2, 1, 2. Now the trick to working with this yarn is to keep your stitches quite loose. That's what works for me anyway. It's quite difficult to work with, but if you keep things all loosey-goosey, I find it much easier to work with. So now we're going to do a half double crochet. So yarn over, we're going to go into that same first stitch, and I've got my tail hidden there. So I'm going to pull up that loop, and then you should have 3 loops on your hook. I hope that you can see that this yarn is not ideal for tutorials. And then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook, and that is our first stitch. And we're going to do half double crochet in each stitch around. So just take your time and take care. And remember, loosey-goosey, loosey-goosey. And if you make a mistake using this yarn, the good thing is that you probably won't even be able to notice at the end. So I'm going to continue this all the way around until I get back to that beginning, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so now that we're back at the beginning again, we're just going to slip stitch, and this can be quite difficult to find your stitch, the top of your stitch. So we're just going to slip stitch into there, like so. And so that was round 2, and now we're going to begin round 3. In order to begin round 3, we're going to chain 2, just as we did in the previous round, like so. And then we're going to do the same again, half double crochet. Now usually, so I hope that you can see this clearly. So in between each stitch, we've got a little bit of a hole in between each one of these stitches. So that's where we're going to be working into. So you can see, I don't know if you can see clearly the defined stitches. We're going to be working into these holes right beside the stitch, like so. So you might just have to take extra care, especially depending on what colour you're using. It can be more difficult. I've just completed a grey one, which I found a little bit more difficult to see where the holes are. So we're going to work a half double crochet into each stitch from the previous round. We're going to continue this all the way around and join with a slip stitch at the end, just as we did in row 2. And we're actually going to do this for 20 rows. So I'm going to continue this for 20 rows. So 20 rows of this chenille yarn. So you'll have 21. So I will meet you back at the end of row 21, and I'll show you where we go from there. Okay, so now we're at the end of round 21. So we've got 20 rows of the chenille yarn, half double crochets, and this is how we should be looking at this point. So now from this point, we are just going to, we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and again with the half double crochet into that same stitch that we just chained 2. Now we're going to half double crochet around, but we're not going to go all the way around. We're going to leave 2 stitches. So we're going to do all the way around with the exception of the last 2 stitches. So sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to see, but we're just going to do the best that we can to see. So half double crochet around, we're not going to go into those last 2, so that will be our last one. Now from here we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to turn our work and we're going to go back the other way. So still with the half double crochets, like so. Going to join in. At this point I'm going to add my second ball. Okay, that's it until we get to the end there. So this is how that should begin to look, because now we're going to start creating the hood. Okay, so as you can see here, we have 2 rows of half double crochets that haven't gone the whole way around for our hood. So we're going to continue what we just did in this row. We're going to continue that for another 6 rows. So we'll have a total of 8 rows of the hood. So repeat that last row another 6 times and I will meet you back for the next step. Okay, so now we have our 8 rows of our hood. What we're actually going to do now is we're going to sew it closed so that it sits like this, so that we just have enough room for a little face poking out. You can make the hood bigger if you want to, just by continuing to add more rows there. But I find if it fits really snugly around the face, that looks really quite cute. That's the look I prefer. So we're just going to slip stitch along the inside to join that together. So first thing I'm going to do is make those two meet at the back. So I've sort of turned that inside out. Now I'm just going to slip stitch in each stitch all the way along. Now this bit can be quite a bit difficult because it's very fluffy and very difficult to see, and also slip stitches tend to work quite tightly, so we're just going to do slip stitches as well as we can in each stitch, and try not to make it too tight because it'll be more and more difficult. So remember, loosey-goosey along there. Go. Oh, I'm stuck on something. There we are, all the way along. That one. And right up into that far corner. Might just add an extra one in there just for good measure. Now we're going to get our scissors and leave a bit of a tail to sew in, and we're going to cut that one and thread that through the loop so that it's nice and tight on there. There we are. Turn our hood back in the right way, and so it should be looking like this at this point. Oh, there's a couple of little strings there that I will sew in at the end. So if I turn this on the side, you can see how we should be looking at this point. So now we're going to move on to the little ears and make the ears. So they're quite simple. I'll show you how to do that. So once again, we're going to remember loosey-goosey is the easiest way. Don't work your stitches too tightly. So I'm going to draw up a loop. Make a slip knot. Okay, so now I'm going to loosely chain 5. So chain 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So those, if you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I hope you can see that. So those, we're going to skip the first two because that's going to count as our first half double crochet, and into our third loop we're going to put 5 double crochet. So for a double crochet, we yarn over into that third chain from hook, pull through 2, and then pull through another 2. So that's our first one. So we're going to do that again in that same stitch 4 more times. That's 2, 3, and 4. And 5. Okay. So including that first chain 2, which counts as a double crochet, you should have 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we're just going to, we should have 1 chain space here, so we're just going to slip stitch into that one like that. Now, so now we're going to go on to the next row of the ears. So we're going to chain 2, and turn our work. So that counts as our first double crochet. And in that same stitch, we're going to put another double crochet in there. So we've got 2 double crochet in the first stitch, which is the double crochet increase, and we're just going to double crochet increase in each stitch across, which can be a bit tricky to see where those stitches are if you're looking at the tops of them. So if you do as we did before and just go in between the stitches at the bottom there, I find that quite a bit easier. So 2 stitches in each across, so 2 stitches in here, two in this one, and then we should have 3 remaining to do. Increase in that one, increase in that one. Whoop. Okay, so, and then the final one, double crochet increase in that one. Oh. So it should look like this, and that's your ear completed. So if there's a bit of a loop here, don't worry too much about that if there's a bit of a hole there, because when we attach it to the hood, you won't see that anymore. So that is the first ear, and you make the second one exactly the same. So repeat that, and make sure you leave a fairly long tail to sew that onto the hood. I'm just going to snip that off. So if you just continue on, make your second ear, and I will meet you back here when you've done that, and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so now that you have both of your ears made, work out where you want to sew them on, and sew them on. And whilst you're doing this, after you've done this, go through and sew in any extra bits. I mean, here's where I joined my yarn when I went on to my second ball. So if you have any of those bits, and as well as this string that we had left at the bottom, you can sew that one in and hide that in there as well. So do all of that now after you've sewn the ears on, and I will meet you back here to show you where to put the buttons. Okay, so now we have our ears sewn on to our little hat or hood. So we should be looking like this at this point. Now I'm just going to go back to the worsted weight yarn that I had earlier, and I'm going to cut off a piece of that. So this is going to, so this piece of yarn that I'm cutting off now is going to be threaded through the bottom to create a drawstring. So to work out how long you need that to be, I usually measure around about along the bottom and then times that by about 4. So I'm going to cut that. Then I'm going to get my large eye needle. Okay, almost done, guys. All we have left to do is to thread this drawstring through. So to do that, we're just going to go in, out, in, out, in, out. So in one stitch, out the next. Back and forth like so, all the way around. To create our drawstring. Until we get back to the point that we started at, which is almost there. if you want, you can create a cord to thread in and out of here, but I find that just using the worsted weight yarn, it's actually really easy to just tuck in and hide if you wanted to use this for like a photo shoot or something. So, and that's the drawstring there. You can just pull it tight and tie a little bow or whatever. And there's a little hole there that you can just tuck that in if you're having photos done. In with Bubba's feet. So obviously how we're using this is that Bubs is going to go in through this way, and it's going to go up over baby's head, and little baby's head will pop through here like so. And it's very, very cute and snuggly. I will put some photos up of some other ones that I have finished with either dolls or babies in them. But before we do that, the last little bit is to sew the buttons on. Now the buttons are completely optional, of course. I've been putting just 2 buttons here because I think that that looks very cute. You can use any size buttons that you like. You don't have to put 2 there. You can put more. You could put 1. This is the way I've been doing it. I think they look very cute, but completely up to you if you want to add that for a little something extra, as I have done. So I'm going to sew those buttons on. I'm not going to do that on camera because that's quite awkward to do that on camera. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how we put the baby in the little Snuggle sleep sack. So just pop it over baby's head. Just pop it over baby's head, over the arms. Obviously, a real baby's arms are a bit more squishy and movable than this one. And baby's head out there. Baby's head. There he is. Isn't he cute? Okay. Pull it down over baby's bottom. Little tootsies tuck in there. Okay, pull our drawstring closed like so. Oh, isn't he darling? I'm getting all gooey over this baby. It's not even real, but look, it does look very real, doesn't he? Oh, thank you for coming and joining me and my little Bubba. And if you want to see more tutorials like this one, hit the subscribe button, like, share with your friends if you think that they'll enjoy a tutorial like this. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.